Welcome to the Explainer. All right, today we're heading straight out into the high desert of Utah to explore a 512-acre plot of land that has literally baffled researchers for decades. We're talking, of course, about Skinwalker Ranch. So let's dive right in and find out exactly why this specific piece of property is widely considered the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet. Now, you might be wondering, what actually happens when you apply rigorous modern science to the most paranormal hotspot on Earth? Well, it's a pretty fascinating collision, to say the least. You see, the Uinta Basin, which is where the ranch sits, has had so many aerial sightings over the years that locals actually just call it UFO Alley. And these reports, they go back centuries. So what on earth is going on out there that warrants 24/7 scientific surveillance? Let's take a look. The modern legend of the ranch really exploded back in 1996, and that was all thanks to the Sherman family. Guys, they lasted just 18 months on this property before packing up and fleeing. And when you look at what they reported, it's kind of easy to see why. We're talking glowing orbs hovering low to the ground, mysterious crop circles appearing out of nowhere, and the surgical, completely bloodless mutilation of their cattle. This wasn't just, a bump in the night. It was an absolute barrage of high strangeness. Just to give you an idea of the sheer terror here, Terry Sherman recounted an incident with a massive animal. He described a wolf that was, get this, 3 times the size of a normal wolf. But here is the truly chilling part. Sherman claimed he shot this creature at close range with a rifle multiple times, and it just didn't care. The beast was entirely unbothered. It's wild anecdotes exactly like this that gave the property its terrifying name. Right, so about that name, the term skinwalker actually comes from deep within Navajo folklore. The specific Navajo word is Yi-nad-lo-shi, which roughly translates to, by means of it, it goes on all fours. In their culture, a skinwalker is essentially a malevolent witch who uses dark magic to transform into or possess an animal. They basically represent the absolute opposite of Navajo cultural values, completely perverting the good works of traditional healers. But here's where geography demands our attention. The ranch is actually located nearly 400 miles north of the Navajo Nation. It sits right next to the Ute Tribe Reservation. And in Ute belief, certain waterways are seen as reservoirs of negative power, which interestingly enough perfectly aligns with local witness accounts at the nearby Bottle Hollow Reservoir. People out there have reported glowing balls of light just plunging into the water and then reemerging. So clearly, the land itself is steeped in a very deep history of the unexplained. So how exactly did a rural homestead transform into a secure, heavily funded laboratory? Well, let's look at the timeline. The Myers family owned the land peacefully for 60 years. Then, as they mentioned, the Shermans endure 18 months of terror and sell the place in 1996. The buyer, aerospace tycoon Robert Bigelow, who swoops in and sets up a dedicated scientific institute. He holds onto it until 2016 when tech investor Brandon Fugel takes over. But really, it was that 1996 sale that changed absolutely everything. Bigelow purchased the entire 512-acre property for just $200,000. Now I know, that sounds like an incredible real estate steal. Well, until you factor in the reports of bulletproof wolves, right? Convinced by the Shermans' accounts, Bigelow funded a round-the-clock surveillance operation. His goal was to use strict scientific methods to finally gather hard, actionable data on all this chaos. And Bigelow's team, they experienced it firsthand. Back in 1997, biochemist Colm Kelleher spotted a massive humanoid creature spying on his team from a tree. He described the sheer terror of, and I quote here, the penetrating yellow light of the unblinking eyes staring right back at him. He actually fired his rifle at it, and boom, it vanished. The only physical trace left behind from this whole encounter was a single, massive track with 2 sharp claws pressed deeply into the snow. Just wild. Okay, but here is where the story gets really wild. These reports didn't just stay in private scientific circles. They actually caught the attention of the U.S. government. A defense intelligence agency official had his own supernatural experience right there on the site. And that led straight to a massive $22 million Department of Defense budget to study unidentified aerial phenomena. So Skinwalker Ranch literally fueled millions in government research. Fast forward to 2016. Bigelow sells the ranch to Brandon Fugel, a prominent Utah tech investor. And Fugel makes his stance crystal clear, saying, "I acquired the property as an open-minded skeptic." And to prove it, he brought in a massive multidisciplinary team, completely locked down the perimeter, and established a 24/7 living laboratory. He wanted to bring a whole new level of scientific rigor to the desert. But what Fugel's team quickly realized is that the property almost seems to actively fight back. They've documented some dramatic incidents with absolutely no conventional explanation. We're talking about the total destruction of expensive drones midair, massive electromagnetic spikes that just completely fry their equipment, and even transient acute medical episodes suffered by the crew. It's honestly so severe that anyone entering the property today actually has to sign a liability waiver. Because of those very real dangers, the team brought on Dr. Christopher Lee. And let's be honest for a second, it's not every day a real estate project requires a staff radiation oncologist, right? After witnessing unpredictable acute injuries linked to radiation and electromagnetic anomalies, Dr. Lee was brought in to establish some incredibly aggressive safety protocols. It's a pretty sobering reminder that poking at the paranormal actually carries very real physical risks. To safely study the land without, getting too close to the danger, the team uses incredible 3D mapping provided by White Clouds. They utilize LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, to collect high-resolution geographic data, building these highly accurate digital elevation models. By integrating this with geographic information systems, researchers can map out spatial relationships between fault lines and the exact locations of UFO sightings. Essentially, they're trying to turn chaotic anecdotes into hard, mappable data. But as focused learners, we always have to apply a skeptical counterweight. We have to look at both sides impartially. And the truth is, despite the high-tech mapping and the massive billionaire funding, the scientific teams themselves admit they still lack evidence that's consistent with traditional scientific publication. In fact, skeptical author Robert Schaefer points out a massive red flag. Remember the Myers family, the ones who lived there for 6 decades right before the Shermans? Well, according to Schaefer, they reported absolutely 0 supernatural events during that entire time. Nothing. He suggests the simplest explanation here is that the Sherman family might have just invented the stories to sell a struggling property to a gullible buyer. Taking that skepticism even a step further, ufologist Barry Greenwood has strongly criticized the decades of well-funded research out there. His main issue? The glaring lack of solid documentary evidence. Greenwood argues that despite all the cameras, the sensors, and the scientists, operations at Skinwalker Ranch are, in his words, always in the business of selling belief and hope, rather than actually delivering undeniable proof. So, where does that leave us? Well, we're left with the ultimate question. Does Skinwalker Ranch truly hold the secrets of the universe, like interdimensional portals and shape-shifting entities? Or, in the absence of hard physical evidence, is this heavily monitored ranch really just a mirror reflecting our own deep human desire to map the unknown? The surveillance is still ongoing, so who knows what they'll find next? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and as always, keep questioning everything.